Shalom WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah Talk. This week in synagogue we'll read Tazria Metzora, two parshiot, two sections of the Torah that deal with leprosy, or what we translate as leprosy, Tzar'at, this spiritually related skin disease that apparently is very contagious. Although if it's spiritual, it's hard to understand why it's contagious, although the rabbis tend to equate this with lashon hara, with gossip. And so as gossip spreads quickly, people who would be leprous would be likely to spread rumors, I guess. Maybe it is an analogy that the Torah is making for us. We do know as a fact now that rumors spread in about the same way diseases do, if you look at mathematical models of such things. But that's not so much what I want to focus in on today. Today I want to focus on how the plight of the leper, of the one who is Tzar'at, who has this disease, helps teach us about our obligations for others. And it comes from a verse in the Parsha that sounds pretty troubling at first. It says in Leviticus 13:45-46, "As for the person with a leprous affection, the clothes shall be rent, the head shall be left bare, and the upper lip shall be covered over." This first case of masking. "And that person shall call out, Tameh, Tameh, impure, impure. The person shall be impure as long as the disease is present. Being impure, that person shall dwell apart in a dwelling outside the camp." These verses raise a lot of questions, but it seems like cruel behavior to make a sick person walk around saying impure, pure. All the more so if that sickness, that illness, is equated with a spiritual dysfunction, with a sinning or some kind of spiritual malady. How do we have someone go around say tameh, tameh? Shun me, push me out. It just seems like an added insult to injury. But Rashi, the medieval commentator, comes along and he says, no, Tameh Tameh Yikra, he shall shout Tameh Tameh, Mashmiya Shehu Tameh, right? He will make known that he is impure, Vayifroshu Mimenu, and people will separate themselves from him. Meaning, not that they're going to separate themselves from him because he is impure, but they're going to separate themselves so they don't catch that impurity. And in a way, it's a public service. It would be like someone who is contagious. When we have today, someone goes to shake your hand, and you're like, I feel a little sniffly today. Maybe I'm not shaking hands. That's an important idea, that we protect others. And that is how Rashi is interpreting this action of the Tzara'at, of the Tzara'at, to go out and to have to say Tameh Tameh, which is against his own interest, right? He doesn't want to be out there telling everybody that he's Tameh, that he's impure, that he needs to be pushed out of the camp. And yet he does. Why? Because it protects others. And there's a beautiful sort of commentary on this in Moed Katan, the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud's tractate Moed Katan, page 5a, where it says, he shall cry impure, impure. It says, why does he do this? He does this to fulfill the commandment from later in Leviticus, thou shalt not place a stumbling block before the blind. Right? That ultimately we have to let people know this so that this leper's own status doesn't become a stumbling block because they are ignorant of his leprosy. So it's interpreted metaphorically. And the rabbis did this with this verse, do not place a stumbling block before the blind, to extend very, very far. Here to say that the leper, the person with Tzar'at, has to announce that he's impure to protect others, even if it's against his own benefit. There's a lot of legal business law that's based on this, that you can't take advantage of your clients' or customers' ignorance to charge them more than something is worth. that would be breaking, putting a stumbling block before the blind, right? So this equation of blindness and ignorance, such that we need to take care of people, even if it's a customer and a salesperson. It could be an adversarial relationship or interpreted that way. Someone's going to get the upper hand and make more money or get a special deal, and not allowed to do that, because you can't put a stumbling block before the blind. If you have information that they don't, you have to share that information. And so this tractate in Moed Katan goes on and on and on, taking all these ideas that there are things we have to do to protect the dignity of others, or to protect their pocketbooks, or to protect their status as pure, right, in the case of the leper. So much that it results in the end, there's one student who won't ask questions of his rabbi when there's other people around. He asks very challenging questions, but he won't ask them when there's other people likely to be around, because he doesn't want to either embarrass the rabbi that he won't have an answer, or which is fine for the student who knows the rabbi will work it out. They'll work it out together, but not so much in front of other people who might judge the rabbi unfairly. Or maybe for the other people, that they won't really understand the question and they'll be lost and they'll think, this Torah learning, it's not for me. And so they have this idea that he wouldn't ask questions when there were other people around to protect their dignity, right? So how far the rabbis were willing to take this idea. There's one more piece of this that I'd like to add. It's that, this Tzar'at would be a malady that would be maybe not on the face, but presumably people would see it. Sores, scabs, some kind of easily visually seen thing. And it made me think of the philosophy of Levinas, Emmanuel Levinas, Jewish philosopher, who said that all of one's obligation is to the other. Right? That it was our job to keep the other safe, our job to keep the other's dignity. And where did this obligation come from? Emmanuel Levinas always said, from the face. That you can't look at another person and see their face, and in that face see the image of God, and not have an obligation. That's where all of this philosophy of care for the other comes from. It comes from the face. Levinas would say the face demands thou shalt not kill. That prime directive, that prime commandment of protection of the other comes from the very visage of the face. And so this leper is walking around saying, Tameh, Tameh, you might be drawn to look at them, right? And see their face, and your instinct would be to shun them, to treat them with indignity. But in fact, by walking around saying, Tameh, Tameh, you would say for them a prayer of healing. And that's another rabbinic interpretation of why we would do this. Is they're saying, pray to God to have mercy on me, Tameh, Tameh, and that people would, because they would see the face and see where they might have looked away. They might have said, that person, they have torn clothing, their head's uncovered, they must be Tameh, they must be a leper, I want to get away from them. That in fact, we don't do that. In fact, we would stop and we would pray for them. So all these ideas coming from this terrible disease and this terrible idea about leprosy to remind us that as Jewish people, as human beings, it's our responsibility to care for others. And that can be difficult. It can lead us to complex questions of weighing different goods and different ideas. But in the end, that's always got to be our guiding principle. Even if we come up with different interpretations of what that means, the guiding principle is care for the other, not putting a stumbling block before the blind, praying for mercy for those who we might even find distasteful or revolting, and of course protecting others' safety and well-being, all of that flowing from these ideas around leprosy. So I pray as Shabbat comes that we all think hard about what this means in our lives and how we can move forward, bringing more of that dignity into the world, such that more peace will be created and it will be a better world for all of us to live in. Shabbat Shalom.